Thinking about launching a podcast but overwhelmed by all the moving parts? At Turnkey Podcast Productions, we take the hassle out of podcasting so you can focus on the talk, not the tech. From concept to launch, guest booking to post-production, we handle everything. Need a strategy to grow your show and turn guests into clients? Yep, we do that too. DIY or done for you, we've got the solution that fits. Whether you're just getting started or ready to scale, Turnkey is your behind-the-scenes podcast team. Turnkey Podcast Productions. Your voice, your message, fully produced. Learn more at turnkeypodcast.com/contact. That's turnkeypodcast.com/contact.
Here's what you can look forward to on this episode of The Nice Guys on Business.
You know, the younger generations want to be viewed as a person, be treated as a person with respect, and have their input considered, sometimes overly so, I think, before they've maybe earned the right. But nonetheless, they want to be treated with respect and heard. And if you don't, it's fine. They're gonna leave, you know. And so it becomes really a business issue. It's not really what they used to say, you know, appreciation is sort of a nice thing to have. It's a have to now if you want to keep your people. And with the job market the way it is, it makes a big difference.
So I was sitting in my cubicle today and I realized ever since I started working, every single day of my life has been worse than the day before it. So that means that every single day that you see me, that's the worst day of my life. At least until I listen to the Nice Guys on Business podcast. Go from where you are now to where you could be. Get expert tips to grow your business, to be more productive and more efficient, whether you're trying to build influence, grow your community, or make it rain. Best-selling author of Nice Guys Finish First, Doug Sandler, can lead the way. The Nice Guys on Business is produced by Turnkey Podcast Productions. Now, here's your host, Doug Sandler.
All right, Nice Guy community. Today's guest is Dr. Paul White. He's a psychologist and author and the guy who figured out why your team loves your spreadsheets as well as your appreciation. He's co-authored the runaway bestseller, The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, with Dr. Gary Chapman, a book that has now sold over 600,000 copies. Not bad for a book about saying thanks the right way. He and Chapman also created the Motivating by Appreciation Inventory, an assessment taken by more than 450,000 employees worldwide, proving once and for all that appreciation really is a universal language. He's been featured everywhere from the BBC to Fast Company and companies like Microsoft, NASA, L'Oreal, Ritz-Carlton trust him to help their teams get along without restoring to or resorting to trust fails. So we're going to have a great time. Paul, I'm excited to chat with you. Welcome to the Nice Guys on Business podcast.
Thanks, Doug. I'm glad to be with you.
Happy to have you here, man. Big fan of you and Dr. Chapman's work. And I wrote a book way back in 2015 called Nice Guys Finish First. And I've always been a guy that has been a believer in catching someone in the act of doing something right versus when they're doing something wrong. Is that really a form of appreciation, or what would you consider that, just as we begin our conversation here?
Well, yeah, it clearly is. And, you know, the 5 languages show that you can show or communicate appreciation in different ways. Often it's words, but actually over half of employees choose a different language than words of how they want to be shown appreciation. But and one of the things that we differentiate, I mean, a lot of people, when they hear appreciation, they think almost automatically about employee recognition. And we differentiate that, you know, recognition is a good thing when it's done right. But it's largely about performance. And we believe that employees are people too, and not just production units. And so we have qualities and characteristics that we can be valued for beyond the goals and tasks that we get done.
So let's talk about this. So why does the question, do people feel appreciated, matter so much in the workplace? Look, I'm going to say this bluntly. I don't feel this, but this is just the blunt situation. You know, they get paid to do a job. They do their job. Shouldn't that be appreciation enough? Now that's the beginning of the conversation.
Sure. Well, you know, one of the misconceptions that we talk about to leaders is that appreciation, the goal isn't just to make people feel good. I mean, that's nice if it happens, but we have lots of research, over 50 citations in one of our chapters of how when team members feel valued and appreciated, the business functions better. That absenteeism goes down, turnover goes down, employee engagement goes up, customer service ratings go up, and actually productivity and profitability go up when team members feel valued. So it's sort of like oil in a machine, that it helps the machine run right with less tensions and friction and effort, and you get your goals met far better.
I found that maybe in the 60s and 70s, and maybe even before the 60s, but I start to pick up my memory, 60s and 70s. I think about ruling by intimidation was a leadership quality back in the old days, and I don't think that is accepted anymore. But there are still companies that hold on to that adage because that's just how they've always done it.
Right.
Do you find that those tend to be the companies that early on in having a company, anybody with a check or checkbook was a client. Now I realize that it's only the people that really align with my culture I want to have as clients. Do you find that you have to convince someone that being appreciative and kind in the workplace is actually of benefit to their organization?
Well, it's actually, I would say that there's a split in the population. There's still sort of the old authoritarian types of leaders. You do it because I said so, and I'm your boss. And those, to be honest, those are the organizations that have the highest turnover rate. And with, culture has changed from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, that, the younger generations want to be viewed as a person, be treated as a person with respect, and have their input considered, sometimes overly so, I think, before they've maybe earned the right. But nonetheless, they want to be treated with respect and heard. And if you don't, it's fine. They're gonna leave, And so it becomes really a business issue. It's not really what they used to say, appreciation is sort of a nice thing to have. It's a have to now if you want to keep your people. And with the job market the way it is, it makes a big difference.
So I go back to chapter 1 in my book that I had written back in, again, 2015, and I think about a quote by Gary Shandling. It says, "If you don't think nice guys finish first, you don't know where the finish line is." And
Right.
I think about the same thing when it comes to leadership and appreciation. Help me understand when leaders start to realize that appreciation is the way to profitability. And even though there may not be a straight line in there, it is an important aspect of a bottom line, is showing appreciation to your team.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We're privileged to work with some large organizations, but most of the organizations we work with are mid and small companies and nonprofits and schools and hospitals and all that. And really, the way that we sort of convince them is we share the principles, and then we do a pilot study with some group. We don't try to come in and just do it organizational wide unless they want to. And it's amazing how when you teach team members, and that's really a key part, it's not just for leaders and managers. That's too much weight and responsibility, and people want to know that their colleagues value them as well. And so we teach team members how to show authentic appreciation in the ways that are meaningful to their colleagues. And over time, it sort of becomes a positive peer pressure. Other departments say, well, how come they get to do this and we don't get to? And also, I mean, you start to see the positive things. There's less conflict. People are showing up. They're actually following procedures like they should be, because when you feel valued, you don't have to try to prove yourself and own everything. You're willing to share sort of the good news, and things work well.
I hear, or I think, and I'll say this line and then you tell me what your comments are on it, because I'd love to hear your perspective on this. There's a direct line between organizations that show appreciation and organizations that have lots of innovation within them. What's your thought about that?
Yeah, actually, I mean, one of the points that I often make in training is that when people feel valued, well, actually, let's say another, when they don't feel valued, creative problem solving goes down, because it's a risk of time and energy. And if they either feel like you're going to call them out and, sort of, diss them, or they aren't going to get valued for it. It's like, why put forth the extra effort? Really, it's interesting. I was just reading an article a friend sent me today that the research is showing that appreciation makes a huge difference to the bottom line, partly because turnover is the single greatest non-productive cost of any organization. And if you can reduce that, it goes to the bottom line right away. And in fact, the SEC and the EU are now making that part of what companies have to report to their investors, because if you have two companies that do the same thing and one treats their employees well and the other, is just sort of standard, the company that shows appreciation is going to outperform in a profitability point of view, which is important to investors.
I'm sure that you have seen this in action. Again, I'd love to hear your comments about this. Companies that show appreciation to their clients also face the rewards that you have, and it's not just the team internally, but it could be your customers could be those that you're showing appreciation to as well.
Yeah, it's a different dynamic, and what's interesting is, and there's some interesting research in a book called Giftology, that most companies waste a lot of money giving gifts to their clients and customers that doesn't have an impact because it's not personal. And that's really part of the issue, is not just from your company to that company, but let's say it's your salesperson to whoever their purchaser is, that they give a personal gift that's meaningful to that person. And a key variable is it's not when they expect it. So it's not during the holidays. It's after the holidays that it has more impact.
Well, I always think about that. If you avoid sending a let's say a Christmas card, but you send a 4th of July card, or you send a card on any other day of the year, it has much greater impact because it gets lost in the sea of other cards and gifts that are given. I would assume that you'd agree with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's right on.
So tell me about how you got started in this work. I'm really curious. I have always been a huge proponent of showing kindness. I wrote a book called Nice Guys Finish First. I have a podcast called The Nice Guys on Business. It really is within our brand to show appreciation, kindness. Oftentimes it's viewed by those that may not feel the same way, that kindness and being nice is actually, or appreciation could be a sign of weakness rather than a strength. So I'd love to get your comments on that.
Well, I'm a psychologist by training, and mid-career, I was consulting with family-owned businesses, successful family-owned businesses. I grew up in the context of family-owned business, so I sort of knew that genre. And I was working with a family in North Carolina, talked to the owner, the dad, and said, how's the business succession plan going? He says, it's fine. My son's stepping up. I think it's going to work. I walked across the hall, asked the son the same question. He said, this is a disaster. It's never going to work. I can't ever please my dad. And so I thought, my wife and I were reading 5 love languages at the time. And I thought, I wonder if this could work in workplace relationships. So I pursued Dr. Chapman. It took me a year to get through to him, but pitched the idea, and we wound up sort of translating, if you will, the concept to appreciation in the workplace. And what's been interesting to me, it's been fascinating, because you think, there's some workplaces and types of employees, let's just call, sort of the tough guy kind of places that you would think this isn't going to work. And our resources are used in prisons. We had a New York Times article written about us with our work with miners in South Dakota and in Colorado. And they sort of took it to heart, and we have visual symbols of each language, and they got symbols to put on their hard hats. And so, when people feel like it's genuine, it's authentic, that you're not just sort of blowing smoke at them and trying to, manipulate. And when you get to the right language and the right action, and that's been something else that we've learned, is our assessment identifies not only your top 2 languages as well as your least one, the one that you don't really care about, but the actions that are meaningful, because like words is actually the most commonly chosen language, about 44% of the workforce, but it's not going up in front of the group to be recognized. in general, 40% of employees absolutely do not want to go up in front.
Oh, right. I'm sure.
And it becomes a negative for them. And so if you do that, if that's what you think words is, you're going to miss the target, and it's not going to have any impact. It may actually be a negative.
I'd love to jump into the languages themselves. I think about the 5 love languages, and I am absolutely a words of affirmation guy. Gifts is by far my last one on my list. I always think I get everything that I want on my own. I don't need anybody to gift that to me. And
right.
So it tends to be that I lead by showing my love to someone with the thing that I love to get the most, which is words of appreciation.
Right.
So I'm curious what the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace are, so that I can kind of see, okay, well, which ones do I lead with? And there may be a lot of parallels between the love languages and the workplace.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, it's common that we lead with the one that's important to us. But if you're going to lead other people, you have to learn to lead people that are different than you. Right. And so sometimes we have to teach people about that. And so words is the most common. It's 44% of the workplace. It's not saying good job. We do research all the time, and we found out one of the things people don't like to hear is good job.
I understand.
It's too vague, not specific. So you want to be specific, and you want to tell them why it's important to you or the organization or your clientele of what they're doing that's of value. Second language.
Before you go into that, can I just give an example of that, just so for those in our community that may know? So saying good job to a team member, it may make you feel good to give that, and certainly there's some selfish motives to saying that, but it may not be specific enough for the person that you're sharing that appreciation with. So you may say, hey, Ashley, I really enjoy when you respond to my emails in 5 minutes. It lets me be more productive in my job during the day. Would that be a fair assessment of?
That's a great example.
All right, great. Yeah. All right, that's love language number 1. All right, what's number 2?
The second one is quality time, which is about 26%. So 1 out of every 4 employees. And there's a generational difference. Older team members tend to have been acculturated that quality time was time with their manager or their supervisor, and either sharing observations or being able to get individual input. But for younger colleagues, it's really about their team members, that they don't care so much about their manager, but if they're valued by their colleagues. And so that it's a different structure, right? I mean, it's, I tell team or leaders, just because you have a team member that has quality time as their language doesn't mean they want time with you, So you need to, you may be great and wonderful, but you need to design maybe bringing in lunch or going out to lunch or doing something else. And that's important to them. Third language is acts of service. It's not rescuing a low-performing colleague. These are the people that sort of live by the mantra, don't tell me, support me, show me, or words are cheap. And it's about 20%, so 1 out of every 5. And it falls into 2 categories typically. One is just those times when you're working hard on a time-limited project that you got to get it done. And what can somebody do to help out with that, whether that's sort of cover your calls or cover your email for a day so you can stay focused on it, or maybe they can delegate some, practical aspect to it and help you get that done. The other is in service industries, when, let's say you're in a medical office and a bunch of patients show up all at once to check in, maybe the office manager can help check in because the receptionist is overloaded,
I love that one. It reminds me oftentimes, if I see, and we have a team of about 15, and one of the things that we do is we monitor our project management software, and sometimes during the day we may have a more active time than not, and we may not have sufficiently staffed for that time. I think that my team appreciates me stepping in. They're like, oh my God, Doug is stepping in to help out. And I think it makes them feel good. And it makes me feel good that I'm able to be of service to them too, because oftentimes, since we all work remotely, we don't have a chance to do enough good acts of service for people. So that's a good one too. Thanks for sharing that one.
Yeah. And the fourth one is tangible gifts. It's not bonuses or raises. Research shows that when a person gets a raise after about 60 days, it has no impact on how they feel about things. But it's small things that show you're getting to know the other person, what kind of coffee they like. Maybe it can even be electronic. I mean, you send them to a website that has some fun memes or videos. It could be that they're starting to coach soccer for one of their kids, and you've done that, and so a website that has some good videos for training. Just you think about them. It really is the thought that counts. It's not the amount of money. What's interesting is that's one of the two lowest. I mean, it's less than 10%. It's 9% in the U.S. In other cultures, it goes all the way down to 1%. That they don't want things and stuff. They want some help or some time. And then the last language is physical touch, which in the U.S., people in the U.S. react to it more than any other culture. But it's really, it's spontaneous celebration, right? It's a high five when you finish a project, or a fist bump, or a congratulatory handshake. And it's really important in other cultures. And our Latin friends and Hispanic, and Southern European, they greet each other with a kiss, and to not touch at all feels very cold and objective. And so you have to be aware of cultural issues. It's always the recipient determines what's appropriate for them, but it's 1% in the U.S. It's higher in other countries.
I love that the 5 languages of appreciation really do mirror the 5 love languages that we were talking about earlier with Dr. Chapman wrote that book with the 5 love languages. I also love the interpretation within the corporate world, because sometimes that's hard. Somebody might say, with personal touch, oh, well, I don't want anything to do with that because I'm afraid of, getting charged with sexual harassment or anything like that. But you modeled it perfectly, or you exampled it perfectly with high fives, pat on the back. We get together maybe once a year with our team, if that, and we other than that, the 364 other days of the year, we're all remote. It's very hard to do anything personal touch unless you're in front of them. So if we go to a corporate retreat, or we go to Las Vegas to meet everybody, a hug, I love that. I'm a hugger, so I never feel like there's anything that is, there's no sexual harassment that's going to be a part of that, as long as it's done in the appropriate way.
Sure.
I think you can go down the proper path.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about some of the symptoms that a company might be experiencing when they know it's time to invite, Dr. Paul White in to help them resolve some of these problems that they're having.
Yeah. So really, I mean, the absolute number one symptom is high turnover. You just got people that are just rotating through, and then there's an irritation and sort of defensiveness that develops in the culture too. When you don't feel valued, you got to sort of feel like you got to prove yourself, or you get tired of proving yourself. And it's like, well, what do I have to do to get a little attention around here? Mm-hmm. And so there's just sort of a coolness and edginess that people are offended more easily. I love to go in and speak, but one of the things that we've created is sort of, a train the trainer model, where we have a video course online that people can go through. It takes about an hour and a half, and then they can take a team. It's usually about a half day of a training, and take team members through to teach them about the different languages and what it looks like, and talk about it together. And you can do it virtually as well. We have a virtual process for it, but and it's interesting that, and I'll just be straight, I'm a Midwestern, that the C-suite often isn't aware of what's going on if it's a very big organizational, but the mid-level supervisors and managers, they know what's going on. And one of the things is that really in recognition programs, it's about the top 10 or 15% of employees that get that. And it's the same people that keep getting it, right? They're sort of like your stars. So you got a big middle group of 50 to 60%. They're working hard. They're doing the best they can. And they're not hearing anything because they're not reaching that higher level. And they're the ones that are at risk for leaving. It's sort of like having a football team and you got a couple stars, but you don't have any blockers or tacklers. Your stars can't really perform. And so it's pretty simple. I mean, one of the things I didn't get past is psychology. This stuff is not intellectually difficult, right?
Right.
But to implement it, and that's where I think we've had success. And we've actually got new numbers. We've sold 800,000 books now.
Oh, wow.
And almost 500,000 people take our assessment. We've got 1,300 facilitators around the globe. And because it's not that hard, but we give the practical tools to help make it go well and easily. So
It sounds like, from my understanding of the five love languages and now understanding a little bit more about how this fits into appreciation in the workplace, it sounds like these are soft skills that I'd rather hire for these types of skills than for the technical skills that somebody comes to the plate with, because I can train somebody how to edit content or edit audio or put together a YouTube video. I can't train somebody necessarily to want to show appreciation or to have an opening for sharing a little bit more of their personal self.
Right.
When you talk to companies about their hiring practices, is this a part of what their hiring practices are?
Actually, it would have not so much hiring, but onboarding. That, in fact, the mining company that I mentioned, it's like just the nature of the jobs there. They have sort of a high turnover rate in the first 90 days of people. Once people hit that 90-day and get into full onboarding, they go through the training, and then they get the sticker for their hat and all this kind of stuff. And it's sort of like, a little bit of a milestone that they reach, that they get to go through the training. And because you want to learn how to support and encourage, I talk about appreciation is not just appreciation tends to be about the past, what they've done or whatever, but encouragement, the language that can be used for that is in the present, when somebody's still learning, still, they aren't performing great, but they need some support. It's where you can use these to help encourage and support them along the way, so you keep them till they get their job down.
And then what was one of the goals when you wrote the book? You have obviously a successful practice, and you have a great consulting business where you're going out and teaching this to organizations. Was this just to bring it to the everyday person that's out there that may not be capable of bringing you into their company?
Yeah, it really was, because I grew up professionally in the not-for-profit social service realm, where you don't have a lot of money for training, and I wanted to make the resources available to small companies, to not-for-profits, and as well as larger companies. And I'm pleased that we've been able to do that by creating this sort of self-guided process. And it's the book is in 25 languages. The assessment's in 9. It's used in over 30 countries, and by multinationals. I mean, Caterpillar uses it in Thailand and in Brazil, and so I'm just pleased. There's a need for it, and sort of unfortunately, but it meets the need and helps create a healthy organization.
I can recall again back in 2015, you're looking for those initial reviews on Amazon to get some feedback from people that are reading the book that weren't your mom and your cousin.
Yeah, right.
And so one of the reviews that I got, it was like 1 star, and I'm like, oh crap, 1 star, and it was like, duh, these are principles that anybody should know. I kept thinking to myself, then I really did strike the right chord.
There you
He's
go.
just not reading it right. I really felt like, if people aren't doing this, if they're not returning their communication, if they're not telling the truth, if they're not being nice, they really aren't striking a good place with what they're doing. And I would assume same thing here. If you're not showing appreciation in the workplace, come on, leadership, you need to do a better job of figuring out how this affects your business detrimentally if you're not using it, and how it's helping you to the positive if you are using it. And you feel better about yourself when you can do this as well. So it's always great.
And in the world of AI, I mean, we see that sort of the underlying theme that's growing is a lack of connectedness. I mean, with remote work and now AI. And so being able to teach people how to communicate that one another is valuable is creating both retaining people, making you a place that people want to come work, and you're staying connected with your remote team members, so that they're not looking to go someplace else.
So for those in our community that want to get a copy of the book, I've put a link in the show notes for Dr. White's website, which has access to a number of different places that you can get his book. Anything that I should be asking you that I'm not asking you, Paul? I want to give you the proper platform to share.
No, thanks. I appreciate it. Let me just add, let me give you my email address. It's my personal one. It's Paul at Dr. Paul White, drpaulwhite.com. And if people will just, cite your podcast, I'll send them a free sample of our assessment. And also we create a group profile for a team so they learn how each other is. Just, I feel like it's fair for people to see what they're going to get before they buy it. And so I'll send them a sample and then we try to keep the prices low so that it can be used for teams.
Excellent. So. Well, thank you for your wisdom, and thanks for sharing exactly what you do and how you do it on the show, and for sharing obviously the languages or the appreciations on the podcast as well. Thanks for being here on the show today, Paul.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Hey, Nice Guy community, never underestimate the power of nice. Again, special thanks to Dr. Paul White. All of his information, including access to our website, everything else right there in the show notes. Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
For the Nice Guys on Business, I'm Steve O'Brien. Don't underestimate the power of nice.